The Senior Bowl practices that count are now over, and we're going to get a recap on that. Pete Smith down in Mobile, your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, the OBR's Pete Smith, joining somewhere in the Southeast. And we will talk here some Senior Bowl prospects. I appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. The everyday crowd keeps growing and growing. If you want in, it's simple. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Well, Pete, we get to this point in the week, and obviously for you, many trips down to Mobile, Alabama. This year, obviously a little bit more sentiment to it. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit of segment 3. But offensive side of the ball, and I think everybody kind of believes here with the changes with the coaching staff on the offensive side of the ball, it's going to be a very familiar feel to the Browns offseason last year on the defensive side of the ball, where, hey, you're making changes. That means it's going to be wholesale changes. It's going to be obviously coaches. It's going to be personnel. Some players on the offensive side of the ball for you, Pete, that may have stood out and maybe do have a future here where we could hear their names connected to the Cleveland Browns over the coming months.
Yeah, so this was a huge year for offensive line, and wide receivers certainly had some talent. I don't know if any – I think Devontae Walker is sort of the guy that screams fit if the Browns don't address it in free agency or trade, and they want a guy who can take the top off the defense, because that's literally what Devontae Walker does. I think Tuesday he was tracked by the Zebra technology at 22.36 miles per hour at one point, and he can go and chase the ball. Now, the problem with him is he's very, very, very lean, and he has his share of drops, but he can run a vertical route tree. He can make plays in that respect, and in that way, he's very similar to sort of Will Fuller. For people who love that idea, for pairing that with Deshaun Watson, like that is what Devontae Walker can offer you. Certainly, the wide receiver from Michigan had a big week. It's tough. He's had a really strong week in general, but his size is not great. He has good speed. I think he was great on Tuesday. Wednesday was tougher for him. But I think it actually may have helped legitimize him as a prospect a little bit, because he spent almost the entire day going against Toledo's Quinyon Mitchell, who's clearly the best corner here. He's a dog in terms of just not afraid, mixes it up, did not have any hesitation going up against the higher level of competition compared to the MAC. And he made Wilson work to a point where, you got some really good reps. He's a guy who wins on a lot of crossing routes and stuff like that. So if the Browns like that, that could be an option. Again, it doesn't offer a ton of size, but he's just a good player. Again, the offensive line, I think this is an area the Browns are going to be looking, or should be looking, both tackle and guard. But tackles, obviously the best spot here in Mobile this week. The guy that sort of stands out as a ball of clay that could potentially be molded, he may end up going earlier than maybe he should, is Sua Mataya from BYU. Has a ton of work to do, but he's 21. He's 330 pounds.
Wait. A BYU prospect is 21?
That's right.
Okay, that's odd. But that is odd.
Young, just dense, it has that wide body. He's basically the opposite of Blake Freeland who was very, very narrow. And obviously, Sua Mataya took his spot at left tackle when Freeland went to the NFL this past year and was drafted by the Colts. But just needs a ton of work. Plays too high, out of control. Just, if the Browns keep out Bill Callahan as it seems to be heading, they still have Scott Peters. That may be a player where they love and go, we can work with this guy. The guy I love, and I'm curious to see what happens with him. And it, I'm cursed with often finding players I like, and then they go way too high. So we'll see. Maryland offensive tackle Delmar Glaze has awesome name. The idea that you could call a dude get glazed up by the Browns is awesome. But Delmar was tremendous. He was a guy I didn't know a ton about coming into this week. Won't turn 22 until August, but he just does a lot of things well. Maryland's got a very good head coach for the offensive line, former offensive lineman. That's sort of his specialty. They've had a nice little run of guys. I think it was Jalen Duncan or whatever last year. It was their light, undersized left tackle project. I think what I saw from, and it's only a week, you take it with a grain of salt. But what I saw from Glaze was better. He got matched up with Missouri defensive end Robinson, who's getting a lot of praise this week. I thought Delmar was really good dealing with him. He's really flexible. I think he could potentially play tackle or guard. Was aggressive in run blocking drills, light on his feet, just a lot of good habits, a competitor. Like, he's a guy where if it goes like it could this year, with so many teams needing offensive tackle help and there being so many guys, that everybody grabs their tackle in the first round, and whether it's the second round or the third round, that seems more realistic, but we'll see. You end up taking a guy like Glaze, and you end up with a better return on your investment. That, to me, is very intriguing. But like, those are the positions that really jump out to me. Unless they fall in love with a guy like Tavondre Sweat, who's really interesting. Certainly, curious week. He did not weigh in. A man who is listed at 362 pounds did not weigh in. He had what I would call a bad Tuesday, much better on Wednesday and Thursday. Ridiculous power at the point of attack when he wants to. The thing with him is pad level. When he gets high, he can get himself in trouble. But he also has some quickness. Like, he's not just a space eater. Now, I think it's important he did not have the week a guy like the Ravens defensive tackle that we all liked coming out, Jones from UConn, had. Mm-hmm. But like, it comes down to planet theory. There are only so many people on the planet, and not unlike with DeJuan Jones. And you can talk yourself into a scenario where you plop Tavondre Sweat in the middle of your defensive line when everybody still has to deal with Myles Garrett, when everybody has to deal with the various threats, Dalvin Tomlinson for another year. And, you put Sweat in there, and how are opponents going to deal with him if he can be that impactful? And you're looking ahead and going, Dalvin Tomlinson may not be here after 2024. Maybe he's here for one more year, but that's a commanding advantage if he's good. And he can be a disruptor up front. I think there's questions with him. Certainly the weight is one of them, but he's just an intriguing player that you can talk yourself into a guy like him and just saying, this is what we're going to do. We're going to dominate the line of scrimmage. This guy, you cannot move on the run game, and have a terrifying prospect if you are a quarterback and this guy comes up the middle and it's through.
All right, we're going to continue on here with Pete Smith. We're going to get some players from the defensive side of the ball, as Pete obviously jumped the shark and was excited to talk about that. So we'll get to it here. What he saw on the defensive side of the ball, your latest Locked On Browns continues. Appreciate everybody for being along for the ride. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. class exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right in to the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen information center. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect mid-size crossover for your next adventure. The 2024 Nissan Pathfinder has room up to 8, an expansive cargo capacity, and advanced available 4x4 capability with 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing capacity. When adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Continuing on your latest Locked On Browns, your host, Jeff Lloyd, and I appreciate each and every one of you who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. Show is always available wherever you get your podcast. And if you are not part of the everyday crowd by now, make a new plan, stand, and subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Pete, you definitely, and look, I mean, times like this, you're down there, you're doing the legwork. We're going to let you just go out on the open road. But the defensive side of the ball, Browns may be interested in linebackers. The Cleveland Browns, this front office has always drafted a cornerback every single year. Edge rusher is something you never sleep on in the NFL. Some thoughts here, obviously, from the defensive side of the ball through, possibly, 3 days in Mobile.
Yeah, defensive end is going to be tough because both that and corner, you have the same issue with the Browns. Is you have numbers accounted for on so much of that. Now, obviously, with Zadarius Smith being a free agent, you've got a real question there as to what's going to happen, whether they try to re-sign him, that seems reasonable,
Pass.
or they replace him with another veteran. So it could be tough on that front. But one of the guys that's sort of interesting, it's sort of a project type, and I say that, use that sparingly because it's tough to take guys you can't really use. But Kansas edge rusher Austin Booker is really intriguing. Because he's legit like 6'6", and he weighs like 240 something, and you can see it how lean he is. He looks like a hooper. He looks like a guard, a shooting guard or something. But those long legs are like deceptive in how he attacks the offensive lineman, and it can be tricky for them to pick him up. Now, I think he needs to get a much better pass rush plan. I think in that way, he's sort of similar to like Alex Wright. Like,
of course,
you're taking a body and you're going to try to add weight and try to see what he becomes. Because I don't think he's afraid to compete. He wasn't afraid of contact, but he again, like Wright, you're sitting there going, this guy needs some work. And if you're a team that's willing to take that on, that could be interesting. Corner again, I mentioned Quinyon Mitchell. I think he's the best in the class, or that's here. I was looking more at the other end of this because, unless somebody comes and offers a very lucrative something for a corner, I don't think the Browns are going to be looking to trade anybody.
They're going to keep that top 3 in place. There's no doubt about that. Yeah,
but you know how you and I like chirpy corners. I'm a fan of. I mentioned him coming in, Jarvis Brownlee from Louisville. Incidentally. He was a Florida State guy, I think, initially, and then transfers to the University of Chirpy DBs with our boy Jairee Alexander,
where it all started.
Professor Emeritus at this point. But Brownlee had I think DBs had a really strong day Wednesday in general. Sort of, they took it on the chin a little bit on Tuesday. Jarvis Brownlee is not afraid, and he's certainly much smaller than Martin Emerson. And not as polished or those things, but he is that kind of like feisty competitor, plays similar style, wants to get hands on, wants to compete. So you look at him and you go, he's not really in the age range. And this week may have screwed him as far as what I thought he might be, which was a guy who go like AJ Green a couple of years ago, who was at the Senior Bowl. If he goes undrafted, the Browns come back and scoop him up, and he finds a way to sort of compete. I didn't love the linebackers I saw here. I think it's a tough class because what you have, and this is true of a lot of positions, is you've got guys who have been in college a long time, like Peyton from North
Carolina State. Yep.
North Carolina State, who's been in college for 6 years, and it's because he's dealt with injuries. He's really talented, although he's got short arms.
So he's going to get double taxed. He's going to get double taxed on the injuries. He's going to get double taxed on the age.
And it's the same thing with Tommy Eichenberg, who ultimately did not participate because of an injury. Was a really good linebacker for Ohio State, but he's older, and maybe there's just a point on day 3 where the rubber meets the road, and you're just like, he's just too good. We can plug him in. I liked Cedric Gray coming into this week. I don't think he had a very good week. I thought he struggled in space. But one guy I thought was good. I dread that he will end up on the Pittsburgh Steelers with the way he plays, is Trevin Wallace from Kentucky. He's densely packed, was a team captain, was only there for, I think, 3 or 4 years. He declared as a junior, but he comes downhill as that A-gap guy, whether it's run or pass. He's coming downhill most often. He looked a little stiff, uncomfortable as a pass cover guy, but for, and what I would immediately sort of default to is, well, he's a great fit for teams that want to run an odd front with 2 inside linebackers, and he can be that guy who comes downhill and is sort of a hammer. But given the way the Browns play their scheme, they may like a guy like him who's a hammer, who you can put behind one of the veterans they keep and sort of develop him a little bit, because he did thrive in pass rush drills, and you may be content with that if you're looking at a guy like JOK and you're just like, hey, if we want to take this guy off the field, we'll put JOK in the middle, get a little bit smaller and cover that way. The guy who's interesting, if you watched any of the Hurricanes this year, is certainly James Williams, because he looked like a middle linebacker playing free safety. He looks like a project. It's definitely going to be an adjustment for him as he competed at linebacker this week. He's a tower at 6'5". He's every bit of 6'5". Needs to get better at tackling and obviously getting just accustomed to playing that close to line of scrimmage. But when he opens it up, man, he can fly.
That's going to be the thing. Like, this may have been one thing for him. The combine might be another, but go ahead.
Yeah. So like if he can be a contributor on special teams, you can be thrilled with what he can bring, even if you're sort of like not really sure how you want to get him on the field, even though, maybe he's a defensive weapon at some point. He's a guy who can maybe pick up safeties and pick up tight ends and do that type of thing, that where you're pretty happy with he can offer. But just as a pure linebacker, I think it's going to take him some time to figure things out. So yeah, I mean, the other guy that stands out and this week was made for him was Mike Hall from Ohio State. Obviously I'm biased, but the truth of the matter is this was the ultimate setup for him. He weighed in at 280 pounds. People will have questions about that. He wants to get up the field and attack, and he's explosive off the ball. He's got really quick hands. He's violent in sort of how he attacks, and he had a strong week, but largely because he's rushing the passer. And those pass rush drills are always going to be in favor of the defender, and particularly for a guy who can get off the ball that quick. And he had a lot of success. And it was interesting to me that the Oregon center / guard, who's outstanding, and I hope he doesn't end up in Pittsburgh. They were using Hall's tape, his reps to sort of showcase how good Jackson Powers, or however
JPJ,
yep. How good he is, and he is a tremendous player. He looks like a top 25 pick. But I think that helped to once again sort of legitimize the threat Hall can be. And, for a guy who needed to have a good week because his playing time was inconsistent. You saw a lot of flashes at Ohio State. There are games where he's sensational. I think he was able to do that and sort of to look that part. And for the Browns, look, I mean, they went super hard after Draymond Jones last year in free agency, and Draymond Jones, about that 6'2" and change, 280 some, not really a full-time defensive tackle, was sort of moved around the defensive line, and that is certainly what Hall can bring. So if that's the type of guy that Jim Schwartz wants to be an energy guy, sort of just like Maurice Hurst in that regard, just get off the ball and go attack, that is right in his wheelhouse. That is what he wants to do. That is who he is. So that's a potentially good fit. But I think after this week, there are going to be a lot of teams that look for him in that mold.
And this will actually make for a great segue because obviously one of the big advantages Mike Hall has in this draft is his age. And Pete and I have talked about this for years, about, you want to hit every box: athleticism, tape, production, age. This is going to bring up something in a conversation here for segment 3. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to continue here. Locked On Browns. Pete Smith down from Mobile joins us. At the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same question. What's the one move I can make that'll take my business to the next level in 2024? LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success all depends on the team you surround yourself with. That's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number 1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire, but need to hit on any hire that they make. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Closing it out, segment 3, your latest Locked On Browns. The OBR's Pete Smith is in the house. Pete, and look, it's going to be the case for the next couple of years. And obviously, college football, everything they did was the correct way to do it. Now it's going to be more of the way to manage it, obviously. But these classes, they're going to be older. And that is not something that's been very indicative to the way the Browns like to handle things. So the question is, do you limit your draft board? Do you change your way of thinking here? Because, there's a fantastic defensive tackle down there who just finished from Florida State this year. The fact of the matter is he's going to be 25 before the summer is over. So these are some odd things that are going to come. Do you think, hey, we're closer to being a contender? Do we, maybe go because we feel it's more of an immediate proven commodity? But these are things the Browns are going to have to deal with, and these are questions that are going to be asked in this building over the coming months.
Right. So this draft class has a bunch of 20-year-olds that are going to be 21 at some point in their rookie year. But to your point, like Braden Fisk is going to Professor.
You got guys who are going to get drafted and guys who are also going to get drafted. That some guys were in 8th grade when these guys were already in college. That is nuts. But go ahead.
So I think ultimately, if you are inclined to draft younger players because you believe in the upside, you believe that they've proven it earlier, I think we're going to get into an era of one. I still think teams are still going to err on younger talent, but we may end up in a world where we're talking more about sort of breakout age and all that jargon in terms of when did they hit the ground running, even if they stayed in college longer. Because it is lucrative, because there are opportunities. And obviously, as you mentioned, they need to come up with a better framework to organize it. But, if there's a world of college football where guys are getting more degrees and being able to, it used to be called hardship for a reason, because you had to declare, because you needed to earn the money for your family or whatever. Certainly, providing an opportunity where that isn't the consideration, where needing to leave college because you need to provide for your family is certainly better. What we're running into obviously now, and why they need to come up with some framework, is the abuse of the transfer portal, to the extent that I think it's more on colleges than kids, but there's some complicity on both sides of that. But there's a guy who's going to be in the 9th year of college. Like, there's a point where we get ridiculous with it. But ultimately, if you're the Browns and you're like, we like age, we like to get younger guys. We want to be able to, we're looking at 2 contract players. We're looking at guys we can develop. Maybe we're looking at raw players that we believe we can coach up. in our image as opposed to having guys that are very formed and specific. I think it will just shift the landscape a little bit in terms of just adjusting with what is the new younger player. Having said that, there's still going to be guys who come out super early because the money in the NFL is still very good. If you're going to go early, the money's obviously great. And in addition to that, you're still looking at your second contract as opposed to your first contract, trying to cash on higher dollars as faster, even if it might, and I emphasize might, be lower initially.
Pete has brought us some great stuff here. I am just going to jump in here with this before we put it to a close. According to Mary Kay Cabot, it's over. Bill Callahan is going to go to the Tennessee Titans and join his son, Brian, and become the offensive line coach for the Tennessee Titans. Look, there's nothing you can do in a situation like this, guys. You just can't. All right. It's one of those scenarios. And the problem is if you try to push Bill Callahan here, you end up turning away a lot of people. And, a lot of people looking at you like, what did you really do? So the Browns, and obviously this will be something we'll focus on here over the next couple of days, are going to be in the market for a new offensive line coach. Do they go in-house?
Are they?
According to Mary Kay Callahan.
No, I know the Bill Callahan part, but look, I mean, they've got one of the most highly respected.
They got somebody in-house.
I would be stunned if they don't just promote Scott Peters. He's 45. He's been an assistant line coach with Bill Callahan for years and years and years. Like, this has been, he has had opportunities to go elsewhere and said no.
And this might also be one of those ones, hey, to make it easier, you've got the guy who can do my job. All right.
And yes, I do think that's a factor. And then the other part of this is, like, even if Bill Callahan was not going to leave for the Titans job, he's 67. Like, he's not, I mean, granted, Tom Moore's 82 and going for another year, but
I think he's older than that, Tom Moore, but I understand.
and Jerry Glanville's back at it, coaching as a defensive coordinator somewhere. But, like, at some point, whether it's this or something, he's going to retire or just whatever. It's good that the Browns have been proactive with this. They've got a guy they like, the players like. Like I said, Scott Peters is very highly regarded. If you, Brandon Thorne, one of the guys who's one of the biggest.
Bleacher Report works with Solo. Yep.
It raves about Scott Peters. I've seen Scott Peters do clinic talks. He's fantastic. So look, Bill Callahan is one of the best in the world for a reason, and losing him is a bummer. But I do think people are going to be very, very happy if the Browns have Scott Peters take that job.
And let's put it this way. The Cleveland Browns already have their starting line for 2024. Yeah, so maybe. What are you really asking Bill Callahan? No, they do. They may move on from one and upgrade another.
True.
That's a story for another day. But look, their top six are coming back, and of those six, 5 of them are going to be the starting offensive line for the Cleveland Browns. He is Pete Smith, the OBR. Obviously, appreciate his time, his efforts. Make sure you're following @_ Pete Smith _ Obviously, a lot of great talk here on players he saw this week. Obviously, a little bit of an emotional thing as Pete gets to see a guy that he worked with in high school here, and Mike Hall Jr. obviously down there, tearing it up, and obviously which should be a nice arc here for Mike Hall as we get closer and closer to the NFL draft. Make sure you're following @_ Pete Smith _ myself @Jeff _LJ _Lloyd, your host here of Locked On Browns. Appreciate you all who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. If you are not part of the everyday crowd by now, make a new plan, stay and subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available, always free wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on ELOB. Let's go Browns.